Everybody, thank you for joining us today. It's a big day for Love Serve Remember Foundation and all of our friends and all the people that you're going to meet and share with today. For the 50th anniversary of Be Here Now, Ram Dass's iconic book, and Ram Dass, who passed almost 2 years ago. So we're really happy, and we want to thank Wisdome and Stephen and Sean and George for helping us make this happen in this very unique space. And we have you here, you guys that are live with us, and we have a online audience as well. So this is kind of a first for us to do this simultaneously. So we're happy about that. We need to thank sponsors that are helping us. I think many of you, or the first 500 of you that got tickets, also got Be Here Now, the book. A nice spanking new copy, which was provided by Harmony Books, who has been doing this for 50 years. And actually, I think it's October 12th. Somebody went and found out that's when it was published in 1971 while we were in India. This is a good time to introduce Rameshwara Das and I. We're in India together. Ramesh is the co-writer of Ram Dass's new memoir that came out earlier this year, Being Ram Dass. And this is Rachael Fisher, who's been working for the foundation for the last 10 years. And Mirabai Starr, an author and teacher who's part of the family. And actually, three of us are on the board of Love Serve Remember and representing all of the work that we have been doing to continue to preserve and continue the teachings of Neem Karoli Baba, Ram Dass, and all of our family of teachers. So we're happy about that. So it's Be Here Now is Ram Dass's iconic phrase that's been ringing through all of these decades. And in fact, Ramesh found that it was trademarked, right, Ramesh, by an insurance company. We actually got them to realize that's not their purview, and so as an iconic phrase that got trademarked, that's one reality of
getting it back.
Yeah, we're getting it back, yeah. That's one reality of what that is. But maybe the truer reality, of course, is what it really means, and we're going to hear a lot about that as we go through the day from different presenters, and also from these wonderful films that we have created, particularly this one from Trip, which is a wonderful company creating VR media here in Los Angeles. And so we're going to see that, which is Ram Dass's first mushroom trip, an approximation, and he kind of guides us through the trip. So that'll be an interesting thing, the first time it's been played. And others, we're going to have interspersed throughout the day these really pretty cool films. My own experience, of course, being with Ram Dass when I first met him. Ramesh is like his first student, okay, was at Wesleyan at the first major talk Ram Dass gave in '68 and talked all night, right? He was there all night. Yeah. Maybe he'll tell him. 3 in the morning. Yeah. But not that long ago, before Ram Dass died, I had the wonderful opportunity of living with him in the middle of the summer. And as the executive director, I didn't say who I am, Raghu Markus, and I'm the director of the foundation. I forgot, like everybody should know me. Anyhow, I was there, and I had all kinds of. It was breakfast time at Ram Dass's house. He was still upstairs, And suddenly it came to me that I had all of these important things I needed to discuss with him about what was going to go on either that day or the next few days, because Ram Dass we were always engaging in Skype calls or teachings or people visiting him and so on and so forth. So I had all of this in my head. I ran up the stairs because I needed to talk to him about what was going to happen coming up that day or that week. So I ran in. He was shaving in his bathroom. And it was just him. He looked at me and he put the razor down. And you know, those big blue eyes, those of us that have been with him, how he just completely got present with when he just peered into your eyes. And he did that, and then it was like I hit a wall. All of the mental agitation that I had going about what I needed to do with him just got stopped instantly, and I got very present with him. There was nothing else you could do. His presence was that powerful. And then that presence turned into a kind of spaciousness that happens to us when we get to a certain point in our meditation or chanting or walking in nature, whatever we might be doing that brings us into that present moment where we're not thinking of the past or the future. And that happened, and the moment it enlarged in a way that reminded me after all of these years still that's what Ram Dass really represented for anybody that came in contact with him, and through, of course, his talks. That powerful experience of just being here, and it's letting go, and it's okay. It's all okay. And that's really, I said to him after, you're still doing this. You're being here now all the way till this moment and passing on that teaching no matter what. After all these years of doing such wonderful work with him, so I found myself blessed in that moment, and we hope that a little of that can exude here today amongst us all. So I just thought we'd all share a little bit, briefly, our experiences. I'm going to start with Rachael, because Rachael came 10 years ago. Can't say you never heard the name Ram Dass, right? That's not true.
Never heard the name Ram Dass.
Oh, you never heard the name?
No.
She never heard the name Ram Dass, okay. And then came into it, and tell a little bit of your story.
Okay. Well, you'll have to excuse my lack of public speaking skills. I do have my phone with me I'm going to be referencing. So I met Ram Dass on a Skype call in 2012, more than 50 years after his first lecture, and 6 months after I discovered who he was. I had just landed a job at Love Serve Remember Foundation, an exciting departure from my college years of waiting tables at a local restaurant. I only took the job because I was excited about the possibility of actually using my recently acquired degree in communications. I had no idea who Ram Dass was, but I knew I was excited to help him to do whatever it was that he did. And to avoid serving Eggs Benedict to another soul ever again. During that first meeting on Skype, I told him that landing this gig felt like an automatic enrollment into Ram Dass College. I didn't even understand what a spiritual path could look like. Everything was really new and fresh for me. At the end of our conversation, he grinned and said, "You're tumbling into the soup." So for the next decade, I continued to tumble, expanding into and absorbing these teachings that came through Ram Dass and his lineage, questioning them, forgetting them, and then remembering. Over and over again, reminding myself that sometimes surrendering looks like tumbling, and sometimes that the only way to find a taste of freedom and presence within the confines of our complicated human lives. In all the years I knew Ram Dass before his passing, we really never had a conversation that lasted more than 10 or 15 words. But I felt deeply connected to him and to the philosophy and love he embodied and reflected back to me. I think Ram Dass would agree that he was not a guru, but he was an incredibly loving, connected man who pointed the way for so many of us towards a new way of being. He gifted me with the clarity to see the world from a perspective I had never considered or even knew could exist. In many ways, he helped me to open the world up to myself. I'm extremely grateful for his continued presence in my life, even if his body is no longer with us. And that's not quite 5 minutes, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to share a little bit, but I did forget one of our other sponsors, Peoples California, Jay Yadon. Thank you very much for your help in putting this on. Jay. Now, Mirabai Starr, many of you know, I have so many wonderful books that she shared over the years, and you were very prolific as well. And Mirabai met Ram Dass at Lama. So Lama Foundation is where Be Here Now was put together. The original box set from Bindu to Ojas was created there with Ram Dass and Steve Durkee. And Mirabai actually was living there, and...
So I didn't actually get there until 1974. And so it was 3 years later, right? Huh? Math's not my specialty. Yeah. And it was the reason that I arrived at Lama at age 13 originally was that my parents were part of the counterculture of the early 70s, transplants from New York, a kind of intellectual, social justice-oriented family, kind of anti-religion in every way. I mean, they were Jewish culturally, but really had rejected organized religion. And so when they got to Lama, they thought Lama was too religious. Because Lama Foundation, of course, is a place of the meeting of the ways. That's a phrase that comes from Murshid Samuel Lewis, who was one of the great teachers of Lama Foundation, who's buried there. I would say that Maharaji Nimkroli Baba and Murshid Sam were the two kind of guiding teachers with a splash of Meher Baba thrown in. But when we got to Lama, it was kind of part of that circuit, the counterculture circuit, right? Be Here Now had come out a few years earlier, and my parents, who were kind of old hippies but early counterculture, back to the land people, had to go to Lama because that was required on that odyssey that a lot of counterculture families were on, you know, traveling around in vans and little campers with their kids. We were sort of a stereotype almost of that generation. But when we got to Lama, my parents found it too organized, too formal. So Lama, picture this. How many of you have been to Lama Foundation? Many of you. So for those of you who haven't, it's basically a hippie commune way up in the mountains, almost 9,000 feet up in the Sangre de Cristo mountains of New Mexico. It's very funky, no running water, no electricity. But for my parents, it was too organized and too formal because people were walking around in white robes and, you know, beads and all of that. There was a code, a dress code, and they didn't want to abide by anybody's anything. But I loved Lama. And I ended up moving to Lama when I was 14, so just a couple of years later. Again, not long after Be Here Now had come out, and really the same, just like a year after Maharaji left his body. And that's when I met Ram Dass. And I was living on my own at Lama Foundation, which wasn't a big deal because my parents were 30 miles down the road in Taos. But I was on my own at Lama, and I was assigned to Ram Dass as his personal attendant. So I every morning would come and bring him his tea and his grapefruit in his little camper in the woods. And I would try to just like leave the breakfast and scurry away because I was working on eradicating my ego at age 16. But he would always reel me back and ask me about my sadhana, my spiritual practice, and what I was reading and how it was going. And I was shy, and it took me a long time before I trusted that it was okay to take his time and actually answer his questions. The years unfolded, and I'm going to fast forward and try to close. In 1996, so at that point, I was born in 61, you do the math. Lama Foundation burned down. This is the place, as Raghu said, where Be Here Now was created by Lama Beings, we call ourselves. I'm still an ongoing member of Lama. Lama members. Everything burned, the magnificent ponderosa pines, the aspen trees, and all of the dwellings. The only thing that didn't burn down was Lama Central, the iconic dome, and the kitchen. And so we thought that was it. That was the end. When did Ram Dass have his stroke? What year?
98.
98. So 2 years later, Ram Dass had his stroke. And what struck me was that it was the same thing. Ram Dass burned down too. And what happened to Lama happened to Ram Dass, which was that what seemed like a disaster created this spaciousness. Now at Lama we have rolling green meadows and vast vistas. And Lama has rebuilt from that nutrient-rich soil of the fire. It's the wrong earrings.
Yep.
The wrong earrings. Ram Dass also regenerated from the fire of his stroke. And there were these vast vistas. So his superpower, verbal acuity, storytelling, humor, well, he was still funny to the very end. But that went away. I mean, his ability to charm us all with his charismatic speaking city. But this other thing that you were talking about with the shaving, those of us who got to be around him in the last 20-something years of his life experienced that spaciousness and the deep power. Nina said to me, as Ram Dass was getting close to death, Nina, who was singing here, she said, she was with him in Maui and I was at home and I felt in New Mexico and felt like I was missing the last months of his life. I was so sad, and she said, he's luminescent. Is that what you said? No, translucent. You said translucent. It's like the light is now fully passing through him. So that's what I would like to share. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Rameshwar Das, who, as I mentioned, is co-author of a number of Ram Dass books, but recently the memoir being Ram Dass, and spent many years. This book didn't come out of the air. Many, many years. I mean, like 6 or 7 years, right? 10 years. Oh my God. So, Ramesh.
When Ram Dass was first in India, soon after he'd met Maharaji, he was being schooled in yoga and meditation by Haridas Baba, who also went to Lama. Haridas was silent and he wrote on a chalkboard, and at one point, soon before Ram Dass came back to the States in 1968 in the spring, Haridas wrote, Maharaji gives his blessing for your book. And Ram Dass said, what book? He had no book in mind. So, do we need to fix this? Okay. When he came back to the States, he actually worked on a manuscript, which was sort of a travel log of his, journey to the East. And he could not find a publisher that was interested in it, so he basically gave up the project. Then in the winter of 1969, he gave a series of lectures in a sculpture studio in New York City. And you probably have seen the photo of him in front of this sunburst sculpture. And he went on for, it was at least 2 weeks, I think, of talks. And he was speaking every night, and the talks got deeper and farther and farther out. And two things happened in the course of that. One was after one of the evening talks, a guy came up to him and said, my name is Bruce Harris. I came with Peter Max, who was a well-known psychedelic artist at the time. And he said, I'm in the publishing business, and if you ever want help with a book, I'd love to do something with you. And he gave him his card. And then just before Ram Dass departed, at the end of that sculpture studio series, a woman who had been there every lecture came up and gave him a big pile of papers, and she said, these are the transcripts of your lectures. I'm a court stenographer, and I've transcribed them all. And Ram Dass put them in the back of his, he was driving his 38 Buick, and he drove cross country to do a seminar at Esalen in California. And he was staying with a writer there named John Bleibtreu, who they unpacked his luggage, and John saw this pile of manuscripts in the back of the trunk of the car, and he said, what's that? And Ram Dass told him, and he said, can I take a look? So while Ram Dass was doing the seminar at Esalen, John went through that manuscript, and he underlined the parts that he thought were really outstanding, and said, I think you got the makings of a good book there. And then Ram Dass left and drove to Lama Foundation, where he did a first winter retreat there. I think one of the first spiritual, really intensives that happened at Lama, at the new center. And as Steve Durkee, the founder of Lama, with his wife, Barbara, and others, was helping Ram Dass take out his luggage, he saw the pile of manuscript, and he said, what's that? And he read through them, and Steve was a remarkably creative, multimedia artist, and he said, I think we'd like to do something with these with you. And Mirabai could relate probably the details of what happened at Lama, but they made this pizza box that was called From Bindu to Ojas, and they eventually printed either 5,000 or 10,000. I can't remember what the final. I think they did 2 printings, and after Ram Dass left, he went out on the road and he was lecturing, and he would give out postcards to people. And he'd tell them about the project that was going on at Lama. And he said, if you want a copy, send in the postcard. And he paid for the printing with his proceeds from his lectures. And then they sent them out. It was called the Bountiful Lord's Delivery Service from Lama Foundation. So everybody's got these pizza boxes, and they ran out finally, and there was still a lot of people that wanted it. So eventually, Ram Dass thought of Bruce Harris. He called him up, and Bruce flew down to Albuquerque, and he met Ram Dass and Steve Durkee at a Ramada Inn, where they spread out the original pages of the core book of Be Here Now, which was still called From Bindu to Ojas at that point. And Bruce took back a copy of the box with him, but he said to Ram Dass and Steve, this Bindu to Ojas title is not going to fly as a general publication title. And he had read through the box at that point, and he said, how about Be Here Now? That's simpler, and that would work. So it was actually Bruce who came up with the title. Yeah. And he went back to the publisher that he worked for, and he was not an editor, he was a salesperson. And the publisher was kind of his mentor for many years. And Bruce said, I really think we should publish this. This is a really remarkable piece of work. And the publisher said, well, let's show it to the chief editor and see what he thinks. And the chief editor came back after a couple of days and said, I don't think you should go near this thing. All this druggy stuff, it's going to ruin your reputation as a publisher. So the next day, Bruce thought about it overnight, and he came back and he said to the publisher, there are a couple of ways we could do this. We could be the distributor for it and not be the publisher. We could publish it, or I'm going to quit. And he put his job on the line. And so the publisher came around to it, and they decided to be the distributor. And it has, of course, sold for 50 years in excess of 2 million copies at this point, and Bruce became the head of Crown Publishing. And it's sustained them for many years. Now it's part of Random House.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Harmony Books.
So that's the a kind of backstory of the quicker version of Be Here Now. It's still a remarkable, help to so many people starting out on the spiritual path. And when you look through parts of it, like the yoga and spiritual instruction on meditation, you realize that Ram Dass brought this into our culture at a stage that was really at the kind of beginning of our spiritual practices in this country.
Yeah. And it's amazing because it's still going on. We get at the foundation mail to info. Somebody just gave me a copy of this book, Be Here Now. I had a little mushroom trip as well. Wow. It's the same thing that happened to us way back. We were there before the book. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, really. So we had a couple of things. We're just to try and keep our timing in order because we have so much to present. You guys in the back, what I want to do is bring up the moments of wisdom and joy, not the two audio pieces. I just remembered In the Moments of Wisdom and Joy, which was a film we created just highlighting Ram Dass's time in Maui over the last, the 15, 16 years before he left. And one of the little pieces in there, he exuberantly tells tells of the importance and what Be Here Now really means. It's a really terrific thing. So that will be there. As far as the other thing we had, which just a little thing, which is Ram Dass in a van, Jeep actually, driving with Bhagavan Das, who he had met in Nepal. And they were going, because Bhagavan Das said, I'm going to take you to my guru. And Ram Dass says, okay, whatever. He was just going along with whatever Bhagavan Das. Yeah, no. So at one point, of course, Ram Dass, being who he is, like he was doing this when he was Richard Alpert, regaling people about so many different stories that he had. His life was so adventurous and profound. And so he was doing that with Bhagavan Das, who suddenly turned to him and said, really, could you just be here now? He didn't want to hear about it anymore. And that's how Be Here Now came about, the actual iconic phrase.